Hi, my name is Josh, and today we're going to do the virtual tour of the Heart Gardens. And I'm the garden manager, and I've been doing this for a number of years. What we're going to look at is some fruit trees and some different species out here on the road. We're going to go in and look at our annual vegetable gardens where our students are in working right now. We're going to go and look at our orchard, and then our high tunnel, maybe some other things that are of interest. But the goal of this tour is to show things that people right here in Central Florida, you guys can grow in your own backyards, and also to educate you about some of the needs of people around the world and how our work interacts with those needs, with training our students, and hope to give you a good vision of what we're trying to accomplish out here, and we hope to see you in the future out here when the whole coronavirus thing has blown over, which hopefully will be soon. So we're out here on the road, and this has been planted to a mixture of fruits and bamboos, hardwoods, flowering trees, all kinds of beautiful and useful trees, kind of to frame out the village. And if you were here today, as you were walking around and visiting vendors and things that we would normally do, you'd be walking through all these plants. And it's kind of a nice thing to show because in villages around the world in the tropics, it's nice for people to be able to, especially children, on their walk to school, for there to be public fruit trees where they can stop and grab a loquat, which is what we have right here, and people get good nutrition from those fruits that are publicly available. So all through here we've got loquats, which are a great fruit that you can grow in your own home. A lot of people grew up maybe raiding the neighbor's yard and taking these. But also there's these better varieties, which is what we grow, that are a little bigger and they're sweeter, and it's worth planting one of these grafted loquats. There's mulberries, there's pomegranate, there's all figs, different fruits. Also bamboos. We have about 25 different kinds of bamboo planted all around, and these are useful for us for building simple trellises and stakes and things on the farm, but also hopefully in the future actually building some nice structures. And yeah, so that's kind of what surrounds the farm, and then as we go in it gets a little more intensive, so that's where we're going to go. The entryway of the garden here is designed to demonstrate the large diversity of species that can be grown in the tropics and subtropics. So most of the developing world, which is our target, that our students are here learning to serve in developing countries and to help people in those situations fight back malnutrition, lack of access to clean water, housing, all those basic needs that so many people go without. So most of what you see here are plants that grow in the tropics and subtropics because the developing world is mostly in that kind of climate. And you do hear animals probably in the background, and that's because this is an integrated farm where we have all kinds of different animals, and they have a coexistence with the gardens where waste products and leaves and things like that go to the animals, and then the manure comes back in to fertilize the gardens. And as a side benefit, we get all the eggs and meat and things and milk from the animals, and also the manure to fertilize. So as we come in here, there's lots of different species all growing really tight together. This is kind of demonstrating the idea of a food forest where you've got lots of stuff planted really tight. This is very different than what you see like a traditional northern garden where everything's in tidy rows. This is more like a kind of a wild jungle, but also it has order to it, and it's got lots of things that we can eat. So right here, this is Cattleya guava, which is a little guava relative that's red, about that big. Underneath of that, there's pineapple. Papaya, which we're going to talk about later. This is one of our most productive plants that we grow here on the farm. We eat a lot of this, and we grow a lot of it. Here we're showing that even in a place like a desert, there are edible plants that can be grown to help people and improve their lives, whether through improving their nutrition or through marketing, selling fruit or other products. So this is a cactus called Peruvian apple cactus. And if you've ever had a dragon fruit, this is a cactus that makes a fruit that's very much like a dragon fruit, but it's easier to grow. And this is cold hardy and grows very well in Central Florida. And then behind it is banana, which is a plant that's really at home in rainforest settings. So no matter where you are on the planet, whether it's a desert or a rainforest, there's something that can be grown that can improve lives, that can produce something that we can eat to improve our nutrition. This is cassava. We may be more familiar with this plant under the name yuca because at various restaurants, like Puerto Rican restaurants, you might find yuca fries or even yuca chips sold in bags. But we call it cassava, and it's a root crop that's under there. And this is kind of like potato for a lot of the world, where in the hot tropics in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, this is one of the major root crops that people grow for sustenance. There's millions of people in Africa that this is their main food that they eat 3 times a day for their calories. And it's grown on a massive scale, one of the most important plants in the tropics. Unfortunately, it grows very well in Florida. We're able to grow this and get 10, 15, 20 pounds of roots off of a plant in a little less than a year. And it's planted by just putting a cutting, like a stick like this one, directly in the ground. It roots, starts to grow, and about 9 months later you can harvest this. This is one of our favorite things to grow. In some parts of the world, people also eat the leaves as a cooked green. This is a little fruit called Cardamom cherry. Some people like these, some people don't. I like them. In here, this is a plant that is a relative of cardamom that grows better in Florida than normal cardamom. So the spiced cardamom comes from this inside of this fruit. This isn't exactly cardamom, but kind of similar. And this is a nice thing because a lot of these types of ginger relatives like to grow in shade. So this is an example of multi-storied agriculture. We've got things growing up above, but we're not wasting all the shaded space below. We're growing things below that appreciate shade. So that's a strategy for maximizing your space. These are muscadine grapes, and these are actually native to this area of the country and one of the easiest fruits you can grow. The main thing you have to do is prune them, and other than that, it's basically prune them and pick them. And we like to grow them on these arches, which are made of cattle panels, and they're very beautiful when they're in full leaf, and the fruit's really good. They fruit in mostly July and August. It's a summertime fruit, and that's one of the easier fruits you can grow around here. So now we're in our vegetable gardens where we grow annual vegetables, and part of the training of the Heart students is to work in here every day and to get hands-on experience working. So you can see there's a student here. She's doing the morning chores. Looks like right now she's killing some fire ants with boiling water, but on a daily basis they can be out here weeding, watering, amending the soil with compost, and planting, harvesting. And ultimately all this food goes into our kitchen, in which we eat. So the idea is a Heart student gets a full experience of starting from seed all the way to eating the food off of their plate. And you can see some of our strategy here is to grow really intensely in these beds. And you can see there's lots of things planted really densely. And we're trying to hit a target of achieving 3 things, which is intensify, diversify, and integrate. So we intensify by planting things at the closest spacing they can grow without competing with each other too much, and by using empty gaps that would otherwise go wasted with things that grow quickly. So right here there's cabbage, which is a little slower to take off, and then kind of in the gaps we plant lettuce. By the time the cabbage needs the space, we've already clipped out the lettuce and eaten it, and we've maximized the space by intensifying. Diversify, we grow lots of different kinds of crops. Just probably in the frame of the camera here you can see we have green beans, which we've been eating. We have cabbage, lettuce, onions, Swiss chard, long beans, eggplant, broccoli, cauliflower, okra. So there's kind of a big mix of things, and by doing that we diversify the things we have access to eat. which helps with nutrition. But also we hedge our bets against pests and diseases or floods or droughts or whatever it is, because if a certain condition, like a pest or a drought, harms a lot of your crop and you only have one thing growing, then you are left with nothing to eat or to sell. In our case, we have so many types of things growing that if one thing doesn't do well for some reason this year, we have a wide diversity of things that can pick up the slack and still provide food. So this is a key strategy for improving food security around the world. And then the last thing is to integrate, which is to try to make everything work together as cohesively as possible in the bed. We're going to see right here a little example of that. So we have this plant, which is called Achocha. This is a squash relative from South America, and that grows well in this trellis. And we're integrating by using all this space the best we can, by growing cauliflower on the sides, and peppers and garlic chives. So right here you can kind of see the whole picture of diversify, intensify, integrate. We've got all that going on right here, and that yields the maximum possible yield. So in terms of the soil, we get a lot of questions about the soil. The reason these beds were built is so we could fill them back in with really rich soil. There's a lot of compost in these beds, and there's also even some red clay that helps hold moisture, because our native soil is very poor and hard to grow in. You can do it, but we've been able to adapt and do a lot better by building these beds. Another thing that is crucial to our training and to our growing system here is to always mulch the garden with some sort of mulch. In our annual gardens, we like to use straw or hay. We get this, this is moldy hay that got rained on, so the farmer couldn't use it to feed the cows, and it came from a field that was not sprayed with any herbicides or anything like that, so we feel good about using it. But this mulch protects the soil from the sun, which heats up the soil, dries it out, and exposes the soil to killing off the microorganisms that we're trying to cultivate in the soil, and also keeps weeds from germinating where the soil's covered. So we get a lot of benefits from covering the soil. And then lastly, this mulch just decomposes right in place and becomes compost right in the garden. In about 6 months, this stuff will be mostly gone, and it will have just fed the soil for a long-term food source for plants. To where a year from now or 2 years from now, the plants that go into this bed will be benefiting from that organic matter that went into the bed as mulch. The other things that go to amend these beds are manure from our farm and also compost. And so our basic formula is manure, compost, and mulch to build up our soil. And we grow most of these plants from transplants, some things we direct seed. Right now we're planting strawberries. These are just starting to grow. These are a good wintertime crop for us. The students just planted some broccoli. And you can kind of see that we're at a transition period between warm season and cool season. We start out the season in September with intense heat and humidity, and that's the time of year where things like beans, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, those things do very well because they like heat, but it's very hard to grow lettuce and cabbage and those kind of things. Right now it's November. As the weather is shifting from summer to our moderate winter we get in Florida, which is not cold, but it's cool. So the weather is in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s there for a month or two. That's perfect weather for things like broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, onions. So by employing a big diversity of plants, we can always have something growing because we're planting the things that like to grow in the prevailing conditions of that weather. So right now, because we're in the transition time, you see both. In the back you see those beans. Those are a warm season plant. As the weather cools off, those are not going to be happy. Those are going to go away. And these broccolis are going to start to be even happier, and they're going to take off and produce. So we're planting for the seasons. People ask a lot about how to avoid pests. A big way to avoid pest problems is to plant with the seasons. When you plant things in the wrong season, the plants are weaker and more prone to being attacked by pests. Our other main strategy for controlling pests is, our big one we have is caterpillars, and we spray an organic spray called BT, which is a bacterial-based organic insecticide that knocks out the little caterpillars that get on the plants. Other than that, we pick things by hand, and we do some mechanical controlling or exclusion. We'll look at that. I do want to show over here, each student has a garden that they care for the time they're here. And this is their own personal garden that they design, and then they plant and they care for the whole time they're here, and they ultimately receive a grade on. And this is an example of a bed, somebody that's doing really well following our principles of planting lots of different types of things. She's got dill, parsley, peppers, lettuce, tomatoes, beans, broccoli, kale, a little bit of everything all mixed together. And this student can take this and replicate it elsewhere, and it's not a huge amount of space, but off of a garden like this you're able to come and get something every day and improve your nutrition. Not only can you get something, you get a big diversity of things. Like this dill is great for improving the flavor of your food. The kale is great for improving the nutrition. Every plant offers something different. So this is how the Heart students really get the basic skill of how to grow from this experience, is working as a community in all the other beds, but also working on their own garden beds and kind of doing it by their own initiative. We're going to look at our orchard over here. So again, we've just got all kinds of edible things planted all through. Two plants I did want to point out while we're here before we go into the orchard are Ktuk and Chayote. So these are two of our favorite plants we grow at Heart. These are both leafy greens, and we know we all need to be eating leafy greens for our health. Really, we should all be eating several servings of leafy greens every day. The darker they are, typically the better, for giving us all kinds of protection from disease, giving us good vitamins and minerals, and rounding out our health in general. So we can grow annual leafy greens that grow in the beds, that's great. But we also grow these perennial leafy greens that live for many years. And we love this because you plant this one time, and then it's always there, and you barely have to do any work to grow it, because they just survive. This one's called Ktuk. And this is a plant that comes from the Southeast Asian rainforest type climates, and it grows really well in Florida. For about half the year it's very happy and it's growing well, and then for half the year it kind of slows down because the weather's a little too cool. But that half of the year where it's thriving is the same half of the year where most people say, oh, you can't grow vegetables in Florida this time of year, it's too hot. That's a complete myth. There's all kinds of things that grow when it's hot. Just think about the fact that half of the world lives in the tropics where it's really hot, and they have all kinds of things they can grow. So Ktuk is one of those. Also, we like that you can just go like this, and you don't even need to cut these up. They're already in a bite-sized pieces, and you can throw this right into a stir fry or whatever kind of dish you're trying to prepare. You can eat this raw. It's good as maybe 10% of a salad, a little bit tough, but we really prefer to eat it cooked. And it's very easy to grow. Just you start them from cuttings, and in the first year they kind of settle in, and then after that it's like this, and maybe 6 months of the year you can harvest good greens from this. The other one's called Chayote. This one is from the Yucatan Peninsula, where there's 6 months of wet and 6 months of dry, so it can tolerate both of those kind of situations. And this is a very nutritious leafy green. You take these leaves and cook them up just like spinach, or maybe a little more like collard greens than spinach, a little tougher. But when this is cooked right, this is a really good leafy green. This one has to be cooked. It does have a compound that's a little bit toxic to eat raw, but when it's cooked in high heat for 5 minutes, that compound goes out in the air and renders this safe to eat. For our half of the year where it's swelteringly hot here, these are our two mainstays, Chayote and Ktuk. These are just indispensable to have in the yard in Florida. But also, if we start thinking globally, these are both huge potential malnutrition fighters. These could be planted in every yard throughout the tropics, where so many people are going without iron, vitamin A, calcium, vitamin C, adequate amounts of all the amino acids to make proteins, all these different things that so many people, as we know from seeing on TV, the distended bellies, from seeing the statistics of people going without, we have a bit of a misconception that there's just millions and millions and millions of people starving to death around the world. And there are plenty of people that are starving, but an even more large-scale and pernicious problem is lack of access to good nutrition. So a lot of times, people are filling their bellies with corn or with rice, but they're not getting everything they need to be healthy. That's why in a lot of tropical countries, 50% of children are stunted. They're 5 years old and they should be 6 inches taller than they are, because from the outset they're not getting the nutrition they need, and that creates problems all the way through adulthood. People that are malnourished are not as resilient to disease, so they fall prey to all kinds of other problems. Malnutrition causes fatigue. It causes your bones to be more likely to break. There's just all kinds of problems that come with people not getting adequate nutrition. This is what people need to add to their diets to round it out. This is available to everybody that's got even a little bit of land. They can plant the Chayote, plant the Ktuk, and this is a simple solution that can be right there in the yard. Every day this goes into the food, and then the resiliency of the children comes back as they start to get the nutrition they need, and people's lives improve from this. So it's great. It's great for Florida, great for our houses, but also this is a huge tool for helping people around the world. And these are the kind of initiatives that we want to promote and we want to fund as organizations around the world try to promote these kind of things to people. This is our mixed orchard. There's a bit of a mess right here because our students are in the process of making a compost pile, which is one of our strategies for fertilizing our crops. This is Napier grass, which yesterday they harvested and chopped up, and we've got manure and other things that are waste products from around the farm that we're using to make a hot compost pile. But here in the orchard we've got lots of different kinds of fruit. We have avocado, several varieties of avocado, persimmon, fig, mulberry, peach, pomegranate, lychee, longan, catla guava. So by planting lots of different kinds of fruit, we ensure that every day of the year we have fruit to eat. This is another malnutrition fighting strategy. Fruit offers all kinds of great nutrition to the human body also. So if you just plant one kind of fruit, it mostly tends to come in all at once, and then that's the only time of year you have that fruit. If you've got lots of different diversity of fruit, they tend to have different seasons, and that extends the harvest window to the whole year. So every day of the year here at Heart, there's some kind of fruit that we can eat, and that's just because we've planted so many kinds of different fruit. We have 50 species of fruit, and at least, and then probably several hundred varieties of different fruits that we grow. And we also like to grow fruit because it's delicious and it can be marketed and be something people can grow for a profit. This is our number one fruit to grow here is papaya for us. You can see the productivity of this plant, and it might seem unbelievable to some people, but this was only planted in March. So this is less than a year old, and this is typical for papaya to be able to produce this much in less than a year. It's a very profitable crop for small farmers to grow, and also it's great for families because this is a big nutrition bomb. It's full of all kinds of great nutrition that's great for developing children, and it's a versatile fruit. It's great for making smoothies. It can be even dehydrated or used in other ways. And then in a lot of Asia, the green fruit itself is a widely appreciated vegetable. and we use that a lot on campus. You just peel the skin off and then scrape the seeds, and then it can be shredded or chopped up into chunks. You can make salad or cook it into stir fries or pad thai or different kinds of food. And it's one of the most, for a vegetable, it's one of the most productive things you can grow. If you look how much is on there, it's really remarkable and very easy to grow. The main thing is it's susceptible to cold, so every few years you can lose the trees. You can wrap up the base to protect it from getting hit by cold, and it will regrow after it's cut. The other thing it's susceptible to is standing water. So if you can't plant papaya in an area of your yard that floods, even for a few days a year. It needs to be up in a higher spot. The flooding will cause the roots to rot and the plant will fall over. Other than that, in Central Florida, this is very, very easy to grow. And we have a system here where any of the fruits that get a little overripe or a bird pecks and they rot, anything like that, go right to these chickens. And they love to eat all the waste papaya. So it's also helping to sustain these guys. This is strawberry guava, this is longan, this is lychee. There's one plant I wanted to look at that's kind of hidden away in here. This is kind of a crazy rambling vine that's called Chayote, and this is another squash relative. Pick one. That is super productive, and this one grows for several years, 3, 4, 5 years even. The vines can live, and they mostly produce fruit in the fall, wintertime, and spring. And this is just a really nice thing to grow. The only thing is it requires a big trellis. This is climbing up on a big arbor, because these can grow 15 or 20 feet away from the base of the plant. But in the wintertime, this is one of our most productive vegetables. We're going to go look at one more big strategy we use to protect ourselves from pest problems. You see, our citrus trees are really sick, and we are encourage people to plant there's so many kinds of other fruit you can grow, to focus on growing those other kinds of fruit instead of continuing to plant so much citrus, because now there's a lot of bad symptoms of the citrus greening disease that kill the trees. Well, we'll run our way over. We'll look at this. This is a fun plant. It's called yard-long bean, and the beans really can grow to be a yard long, as you can see here. And these are eaten kind of like a green bean. You just chop them up and cook them into food. And this is a great plant because it tolerates a lot of heat and humidity that most vegetables can't tolerate. This comes from Southeast Asia, where it's real hot and rainy. And we're growing this right now to get some seed, because this is a rare variety. We're going to save the seed, and then in future years we'll grow this out to eat. We also like to employ beauty into the farm, just growing flowers just because they're pretty, but they can also attract helpful pollinators and other beneficial insects to the garden. But we mostly grow them because we like how they look. Our hurricane winds kind of blew that over. This is a fruit called jujube, tropical jujube. Actually, here's an example of some fruit that's almost ready to pick. I don't know if you can see there. But this is the closest thing that you can grow to an apple in the tropics. And it actually does really well in Central Florida. It's a little bit cold sensitive for this area, but it does okay. And you can see how productive it is. All these little fruits are coming on. It's really nice, crunchy. It's not as sweet as an apple, but it's as close as you can get. People try to grow apples here, but haven't had so much success myself. Okay, so let's look here into our high tunnel. So we are in our high tunnel which is a production area for high-value vegetables that have bad pest and disease problems outdoors. So the roof is covered with plastic, greenhouse plastic, and the sides are covered with insect netting. And the main reason we do that is that the plastic keeps the rain from getting on the plant's leaves, and the mosquito netting keeps pests from coming to eat the plants. So tomatoes are very susceptible to leaf diseases. They especially spread when the leaves get wet. So every morning when dew settles on the plants, the diseases like early blight proliferate. So keeping a plastic over the tomatoes is what truly keeps them healthy. This is a system of trellising growing tomatoes indoors that was developed in Europe. And you drop these plants. It's a little bit complicated to explain in a brief moment here, but these plants are dropped and they walk kind of in a circle around the greenhouse, and we get continuous production on the same plants for about 10 months. If you've ever been to the land ride at Epcot, Disney, this is the same basic system that you see there. And this is actually something that can be practical for people even in the developing world, because the materials are available and people can get a really good income on these kind of plants because they're hard to grow outdoors in a lot of the tropics, especially in the wet season. So these are about to start ripening their first fruits. Probably can't see any on the camera, but we also grow cucumbers in here and peppers. And these cucumbers they're kind of on their way out. They'll probably be replaced with more tomatoes. But this is one of our most productive areas, and it was built entirely out of recycled materials for the most part. Even these poles were found as reclaimed materials. The the whole structure is made of a carport, like those metal structures that you put a tarp over to park your car. Built out of an old carport mixed with some parts from an old swimming pool, and then fortified with bamboo and random pieces of wood that were laying around here. The only thing that we really had to buy new was the insect netting, which came off of eBay. So it's not totally impractical for a homeowner or a small garden to build something like this, because it's simple materials that can be found around a lot of times or purchased for relatively cheaply. Okay, so we're here with some of our bananas, and I wanted to stop and look at the bananas because this is a plant we get a lot of questions about. There's a lot of interest in growing bananas, and people just wonder, what are bananas all about in Florida? The first thing that's so important is to choose the right variety to grow. Not all bananas are created equal in their tolerance to cooler weather, and also their tolerance of our soils and all the different conditions here. I found some of them, eke by or hardly even make it, and others really thrive and produce a lot. This one is called Dwarf Namois. I believe it's from Thailand. And if I were to plant just one banana, I think this would be my personal choice because the flavor is so unique. It doesn't taste like any grocery store banana you've ever had. It's hard to describe, but it's a totally different eating experience. Another one we grow is called SH3640, and if you're looking for just a straightforward grocery store style banana, that's the one in my opinion to plant. And it's nice to have both of these because they have different uses. You can also grow a plantain type banana. Dwarf Orinoco is the best one that we found for that use. It's a dual use one, but you can cook it like a plantain. So bananas, they're not trees, they're these fleshy, watery stems, and the whole cycle of this thing is like a year to come up like a pup like this into fruit. It's a really fast growing thing. If you cut in there, there's no wood, so it's not a tree. And you start a new plant by digging off one of these suckers and planting it. And you can always come to Hard and buy these. We sell the pups for $12 or $15 depending on the size. And the key thing to growing these is food and water. They need a really good growing location. If you put them out in a sandy corner of the yard and just hope for the best, you're really not going to do well. They need good, adequate nutrition and water. So we actually dug a pit. You can't see anymore, but there's a big trench here, and that trench helps water to accumulate at the base, and also organic matter accumulates here. So we even do this kind of crude composting where we lay chunks of wood, bags of leaves from the side of the road, whatever, all gets piled here, and that's all decomposing and feeding the banana clump. You don't be afraid to use lots and lots and lots of mulch around them. You can put food scraps under the mulch, or compost the food scrap first, give it to the plant. If you use chemical fertilizer, which we don't here, but if you use that, bananas like lots of it. So food, nutrition, and then they can get hit by cold, so that's a problem also. But yeah, on the right property, they're very easy to grow. They kind of are the opposite of papaya. Papaya likes the well-draining soil, bananas like the wet. So if you're on a wetter piece of property, bananas may be a really good option. So before we pop in the greenhouse, I thought it'd be fun to show everybody this little planting of papayas, because you can really see when they're in a group like this how much fruit you can get off of a small space if you're growing papaya. I haven't counted, but I'd say there's at least 20 or 30 or even more fruits on a lot of these plants. And just again, they're one of our favorite things to grow. So we're going to go in the greenhouse. This greenhouse is where we start a lot of our plants that go out to the farm as experiments, and a lot of plants in here get shared in the community, and we also have a sales nursery where we sell plants out of. So this is kind of where it all starts. We could just check out some of the different plants in here. There's all kinds of rare fruits that are young that we're evaluating to see how they're going to do. This one, for instance, is called Cedar Bay Cherry. This is called Rainforest Plum. This is called Kwai Muck. Different kinds of mulberries. We have some jackfruit seedlings in here. Passion fruit. One thing that we do a lot is we start plants by cutting. So some people may not be familiar with this, but it's a simple process of putting sticks into soil, and a lot of them can actually grow roots and grow. So these are little mulberry trees. Hopefully will take off. And yeah, so if you ever want to come visit the village, for a lot of the year our sales nursery is open. We'll be more after coronavirus is over, pushed back hopefully, we'll be in more full force with our nursery, and we always want people to come here, check the place out, get a tour if you can, and a great way to support us is to buy plants from our nursery. So if any of these plants interest you, or you're looking for a local source of fruit trees, or some of the more rare edible leaves, things like that, Heart is a great place to come buy those things, and also you know that you're supporting a nonprofit that's doing community work and helping people around the world. So that basically summarizes our tour of the garden. There's a lot more to see, so we hope in the future, when coronavirus is starting to go away, the village will be back open for lots more visits. You can come for a tour right now. We do socially distanced tours, but in the future we'll be back open at full scale, and our nursery will be running at high capacity. And if you've seen plants here that interest you, you can always come out to Heart to get them, and also know that the nursery is supporting a good cause. And I hope you've enjoyed the tour. Thanks for coming along.